musicians of the Tallgrass Film Festival, and to my left, across the aisle, is Zach Piper, producer of Life Itself. When did you meet Roger Ebert?
I met Roger Ebert for the first time. Well, I actually met him at a festival in Chicago, a screening in Chicago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, of a different film. But I first met Roger in December 2012, when the film opens. The day that we went to Roger's house was the day that he had woke up that morning. He tried to get out of bed and he wasn't able to put any weight on one of his legs, his right leg, I think. And it turned out he had broken his femur, but there was no incident associated to it, so he just sort of woke up with a broken bone. And that was the cancer that was later, the cancer had come back, but at the time we didn't know. So when we started the film, he was just getting sick again.
I see. So it must have turned out to be kind of a different film than maybe was originally planned.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we had a lot of, as the film opens, where the narration is that we go to Roger's house to kind of meet with him to talk about our plans to start, filming, which we kind of had a little wish list. Like, we knew that Roger loved to entertain his friends at his home in Michigan that they'd owned for decades. And so we definitely wanted to get that. We wanted to get Roger going to one of the critics screenings, that he'd done for decades in Chicago at the Lake Street screening room. We wanted to definitely film that. And we sort of had a checklist of things to get, but everything changed when he was sick. And most of the time we were filming with him, he was in the hospital, as you see in the film, or in rehab.
Right. It must be kind of daunting to make a film about a film critic. Now, I guess he did review Steve James films over the years, favorably or always, or?
I think, that was the thing about Roger. I think when he respected filmmakers, he would always give, if he genuinely loved the movie, he would give a really favorable, positive review. But if he respected the filmmaker but didn't like the film, he would just give a summary of what the film was about a lot of times.
Yeah, I can see that. You see people doing that a lot.
No, definitely, Roger was the main force behind Steve's first film, Hoop Dreams, in 1994. It premiered at Sundance 20 years ago, and Roger and Gene were a big reason that the film had, some success, and that people saw it because it was a documentary at the time. And even now, to a certain extent, documentaries aren't films that a lot of people see.
That's right.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
Well, did he give advice to Steve or criticism during the filming?
There was no advice or criticism, but I will say that the very first shots of the film where Roger's in bed with his computer, I mean, those were literally some of the very first moments we filmed with him. We may have been filming for 10 minutes earlier, but those were some of the first images we captured. But the funny thing was, all this kind of stuff where Roger's saying, "Steve, shoot yourself in the mirror," all this. I mean, he was doing that all the time. And when it was, on these early shoots, it was me and Steve only, and I was the sound person. And so he would type everything on his computer, and then he'd hit the button to make the computer talk for him. And he would look at me and be like, "Let me do it again?" And he'd push it again and make sure my mic didn't get there fast enough. So he was really aware of what was happening, and he was just having fun with it.
Well, now you were the producer on this film, and there were several producers. So what was your role in the making of this film?
Well, really, my role in this film was I came on the project at the very beginning, and it was really Steve and I as the primary producers to, working on the shooting, the budgeting, the fundraising, through the editing process and into the rollout of the film, and working with CNN Films and Magnolia on the distribution.
Well, I know that the audience probably has some questions. I have a whole bunch, but let's open it up.
How hard was it for Chaz to let you in and see him in some of his more difficult times. She seemed to be very strong to me, but there had to be times that she's like, enough. Were there times like that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Chaz is great. She's such a wonderful person, and she did everything that you would hope that a partner would do. I mean, Roger was ill. He was very, you know, fragile and vulnerable, and she was very protective of that. I mean, we were, in some ways, I don't know if the word's luckier, but Chaz wasn't there the first day we filmed. And so that first suction scene, we filmed that without Chaz being there, but Roger wanted us to film it. Whenever Chaz was around, it was more difficult. She would say, okay, you guys have to leave the room. They're going to do suction, you know, and we'd already filmed that, but we sort of let her give us the boundaries. We didn't really push, but you know, we sort of, over time, it got to be a little bit better, but it was always kind of like a give and take on that. But the interesting thing with Chaz is that she said to Steve and I, after the film was done, after she watched the finished film, and she said, you know, I didn't realize how sick Roger was until after I watched the film. That it never quite hit her. One of the ideas is that you have a responsibility to your subjects, so in this case, Roger and Chaz primarily, and that part of the deal is before we're done with the film, we show them the film. Not because they have editorial control or creative control, but it's sort of like, it's only fair, you know, they let us into their life, let us film things that maybe they didn't want us to film, but to let them at least have their say, so they can look at it, and if they have a problem with something, they can tell us before anyone else sees it, and then we can at least have a discussion. And we may not change anything, but we can at least have that back and forth. And we did that on this film. There were a few things, but the only thing that, I think it came from Chaz's daughter, Sonia, was the bit about one of Roger's friends, Bruce, who's in the bar, and he's saying, Roger had, you know, the worst taste in women. They were gold diggers, psychos. Okay, they said, okay, now can we make a little distinction? His taste in women back then, not today, back then. So we said, oh, you're right, we didn't really make that distinction, so that's what we meant. So anyway, we made sure that was clear. And Chaz was happy, and so was the family, so that was good.
Hi. Comparing the original story that you set out to tell when planning to make this documentary originally and the story that we've seen today, do you feel like the unfortunate course of events that you're telling us about right now led to an even more meaningful and far-reaching narrative than, no offense, maybe you intended to tell in the first place?
I think that's probably true. I mean, the fact that we were able to be with Roger and film Roger, where he is facing, he says in the film, I have 6 months, you know, maybe a year. And so he's facing his own death. He knows that they had stopped, you know, treatment. And so I think that sort of brought a lot of different things, you know, forward, and that maybe we weren't going to necessarily get to. And Roger's someone that was so difficult to try to figure out. He led like, you know, 10 lives. He did so many things, and he knew so many people and impacted so many people, and it was hard to even just to try to get your arms around that and figure out how to tell that story. And so people, you know, certain aspects of his lives were left out, but I think that we were with him when he was facing his own death, that I do believe that, you know, brought forth things that wouldn't have come forward otherwise.
And then you're producing another film right now, 63 Boycott, or is that finished?
Yeah.
Where are you with that? Tell us about that.
Well, I'm actually producing another film with Cartemquin, not with Steve, but with the production company. But right now, in the coming months, my focus is on this other film. It's called Saving May Sinai.
Saving
May Sinai. It's an archaeological site in the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's a 5,000-year-old site at the mountain, and the Afghan government leased the mountain range to China. And China's going to come in and mine $100 billion of copper, and they're going to remove the mountain. So this 5,000-year-old city, which is the size of Pompeii, is going to be completely leveled, destroyed, gone. And they've only excavated about 10% of the site. It's a 30-year dig.
Wow.
So the film's about the Afghan archaeologists trying to raise awareness and work. And they're at the front line of the Taliban. Where it's Taliban-controlled territory, there's missiles and things flying over their head, and they were with a brush and little dental tools trying to excavate a toe, you know, and there's missiles flying over their head. So it's a really incredible thing, and they're not even being paid, so.
Sounds fabulous, and we expect to get a submission, so. and have you back. So thank you so much for being here, Zach. And,